We had the college football playoff rankings come out last night, the final round, and I think the biggest move for everybody as we went through looking at this, and you tell me if you disagree, Alabama moving up to number 9 ahead of Notre Dame. The top stage largely the same, Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia, and Texas Tech in the top 4, followed by Oregon. Ole Miss jumps up to 6, and I should say not totally the same. Georgia replaces number 3 Texas A&M that moves down to 7 with that loss to Texas last weekend. But then Alabama, coming off a close win in the Iron Bowl on the road, leapfrogs Notre Dame, who had been ahead of them the prior week. Was this, to you, the most shocking move of the night?
Oh, yeah. I think that was a course correction for the committee, basically saying that if you lose a conference championship game and Alabama plays Georgia in the SEC title game, Alabama beat Georgia in the regular season this year, but play them now. We have seen conference championship losers drop a spot. And I think this is the committee's way of saying, hey, if Alabama loses a close game to Georgia, the most we'll drop them is a spot, and they're still going to make the playoffs. Remember, last year they missed the playoffs with 3 losses. I think the committee put them in a position, unless they get blown out, which I don't know why they would, to be in position to just drop 1 spot and still make the playoffs. But it certainly puts Notre Dame in a precarious position because 11 and 12, I've continued to use the term, people are probably sick of it, are trapdoors. For possibly the ACC or the AAC or the Sun Belt with those championship games being outside the top 12. So I think they stopped Alabama from maybe dropping to 11 and being out again.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting. We're always trying to mine for data. I was doing a rankings reaction show for Bleacher Report, and Hunter Yurchek, the committee chair, came on, and he echoed what he said with Reese Davis on the reaction show after, which is the debate around 9 and 10 specifically. Because I asked him about Notre Dame and Miami, BYU, and Brett Yormark, the commissioner for the Big 12, stumping for them. And he said, we talked about all 4 of those teams in conjunction, but he referenced specifically that debate around Notre Dame and Alabama divided the committee room, was one that was, in his words, as fierce as any debate he's been a part of in the last 2 years. And this is the difficult part, Dak, because what you laid out is probably the reality of the situation. I was surprised Notre Dame jumped Bama when they did, given the wins on Alabama's schedule, but you had them jumped. And the justification is going on the road against an Auburn team that was so good at checks notes, fired its head coach during this season. And it took Alabama, I understand they got out to a lead. It took every bit of them to hold on to this touchdown lead at the end. So the explanation to me just defies the reality of what we saw, especially considering it's not like Notre Dame had a difficult outing against a Stanford team, also bad, going to miss the bowl season. They already announced the hiring of Tavita Pritchard. Like, it made no sense to me.
It made no sense, the explanation. I mean, to hear the explanation to say, well, Alabama played in a rivalry game, to your term, checks notes, against a 5-6 Auburn team, and they play, and this is your check saying, they played well in the first half. But the second half, remember, Auburn fumbled going for the tying score when Auburn almost tied that game up. So the explanation is, and listen, this has happened every year with the committee. They just do things that make you scratch your head, but it's what we have. We have a 13-person human committee where the goalposts seem to be moved, where every year someone's ticked off. Florida State's ticked off. Alabama's ticked off. This year, maybe Miami or Notre Dame or both will be ticked off. We'll wait and see. But they always seem to move the goalposts a little bit, just enough to make you kind of scratch your head.
So I'll say this, as someone that did a rankings reaction show for years at ESPN with our buddy Jason Fitz, have been a part of the process. We obviously cover it here. It's great for content. I'm sure it rates incredibly well. It makes money. The committee you talked about, the maddening inconsistency in results, I find it hard to blame the committee because, again, what they're trying to get their arms around is an incredibly unruly sport already. And when we took it from 4 to 12, what we did was Take it from measuring resumes that were about excellence. It was 0 or 1 loss teams. It was groups at the top of the sport. Now we're comparing flawed teams. And when you hear the different things that they think about when they're trying to compare and contrast these teams, you're right, it does change every week. And again, I'm not blaming the committee and saying they're doing a bad job of this. But what I'm saying is us having to hear about it every Tuesday night is a net negative on the entire discourse. And again, I'm not blaming ESPN. I heard Bud Elliott say this. Anyone would do that if they had it. But the problem is, because we are doing it, it's driving fan bases insane. And it's made the discourse around this as toxic and unappealing as any I can remember.
Yeah, listen, and obviously Alabama jumping Notre Dame was a talking point. But then Notre Dame and Miami continues to be a talking point, right? And the thought is, well, if BYU loses and Miami jumps 1 spot, now they're 1 spot away from Notre Dame, and maybe they'll take head-to-head into consideration. Well, why the hell wouldn't they take head-to-head into consideration if they're 2 spots separated from each other like they are now? I mean, 1 spot's going to make that much difference, and I say it again as a Notre Dame grad, I would be ticked too if I was a Miami player or coach or fan. You beat Notre Dame head-to-head. Why would you have to wait if, in fact, the committee would do that if BYU loses and falls out? Miami moves to 11, Notre Dame's at 10, for the committee to then say, okay, now we can do head-to-head. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense at all. If they were going to put Miami ahead of Notre Dame, they'd have already done it.
That was my thought process as well. Now, the quote that everyone's holding on to is one that actually came later when the CFP chair, Hunter Yurachek, was talking to the media that says, quote, it uses head-to-head as one data point, and that he said the CF Play Committee is, quote, it is easier to use that data point when teams are back-to-back. He said that the committee still felt that Notre Dame deserved to be ranked ahead of BYU and Miami. And when I asked him about it last night, he said, we're going to watch all the games this weekend, and then we are going to make our decisions. He really wouldn't budge much on that. But people holding on to what I just described there, it's easier when they're back-to-back. I'm with you in the way that I interpreted all of this, which is still, and that's why I asked, were these teams talked about together? And they were. Alabama, Notre Dame, BYU, and Miami were all debated by the committee together in a room. And with the final bits of data for Notre Dame and Miami this season, the committee still thought not only should they be ranked above Miami, but that BYU should also be ranked above Miami at this point.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. They've already been close to each other. They've already been discussed together. Miami does not have a team that they playing on conference championship either. Notre Dame, Boise State's playing in the Mountain West Championship. So in theory, if Boise State wins that game, Notre Dame's strength of schedule could get some small bump in there. The metrics are going to be about the same. The argument for Miami continues to be the same. And it would be, again, you know what, Dad? I guess this is how I put it. If we had never heard the committee talk on Tuesday nights and we had just come out and the AP poll had done their thing, and at the end, they gave us Miami, Notre Dame, we'd have all looked up and said, well, yeah, we understand. Miami beat Notre Dame head-to-head.
Yes.
There's a perfectly reasonable argument for that. But now that we've seen the way the committee has positioned them this entire time, it would take what would be on its face a rational decision in totality and make it look entirely irrational to another group of people and Notre Dame fans, given what the committee has shown they value in the eye test and in what you've done against handling your business against lesser competition.
It looks completely irrational. You're right. If this last ranking or the one before had Miami before Notre Dame, I'd be bummed, but I'd get it, right? Because their resumes are close and Miami won. They're done playing. They finished playing before the penultimate ranking. They're done. Their resumes are complete. If you were going to put Miami ahead of Notre Dame, this was the time to do it. Not when they're not playing, they're sitting around. It makes the committee look ridiculous in my eyes. If you want to, and again, I'm saying, if last ranking or the one before they put Miami ahead of Notre Dame, I would have been bummed, but I would have understood. If they do it now when neither team is playing, I know Miami fans will be happy, Notre Dame fans will be sad, but it's ridiculous, the timing of it.
It is wild to see it play out this way. And now, as we spin forward to conference championship weekend, this is where this all gets incredibly interesting as we try and game out who's already going to be in the field. Texas A&M, Oklahoma sitting at number 8, Ole Miss, who, by the way, Ole Miss Congratulations to the players on those teams. Like now, them being above Texas A&M, a little bit interesting. I asked Hunter Yurchik about that. He pointed to the offense, some of the things that they do better. Texas A&M's metrics on paper, strength of resume, the rest of that trumps what Ole Miss has. So I'm a little surprised Texas A&M fell down below Ole Miss. But that being said, there was a wonder out there, and I don't know if it was fully legitimate or not, about, hey, similar to what happened with Florida State when Jordan Travis got injured, would the committee look at them differently because who's coaching your team materially changes how they look at that? And I thought it was interesting. Hunter Yurchik said about that, we don't have any evidence to show us that that's a different team. Like the Florida State offense, while I disagreed, Florida State should have been in that tournament, they weren't. But the committee said Florida State offense looked demonstrably different without Jordan Travis, which affected the way the committee viewed that team. The committee does not have a data point to go off of in terms of what this team looks like without Lane Kiffin. And so they didn't feel like they were in the, it had the ability to punish them. So they get to stay in their spot and potentially play for a championship. Charlie Weiss Jr. is still going to be calling the plays, which, as awkward as it might be, Dad, I feel good that these guys are at least going to have the opportunity that was taken from Florida State to still go out here and accomplish what they hope to in this tournament.
And did you also see some of the players refuted what Lane Kiffin said when Lane Kiffin was trying to say, I was begging the administration to let me coach through the playoffs. The players wanted me to coach. And now players are coming out and saying, that ain't true. That is bogus. I mean, what is Lane doing? I mean, he knows people are going to say stuff. So I don't understand that at all. But players don't remain silent anymore.
No, I was always wondering when that was going to start happening. It was only a couple from what I saw, but it was enough talking about what went on in that room to at least give another version of the events that Lane tried to portray there. So now we go into conference championship weekend. Those teams that I mentioned there look like they're in the field. Oregon, who will be sitting at home watching this season, going to be in the field. Alabama and Georgia, you'd imagine it'd be hard-pressed the SEC championship teams not make it in, and the Big 12 championship becomes the center of a lot of people's conversations. We will detail some of the chaos scenarios later on in this show.